Hey, John, you're muted.
How about now?
Now I can hear you.
Good. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Let me just send one email that somebody's asking me to sign some stuff while I'm doing all this. So let me just send it back to them.
Sure. I can tap dance while we're waiting.
No, I did it all. It's unfortunately, it seems like I play lawyer for some things.
Yeah, I heard you were a good one on TV at one time.
Yeah, I'm like, what's that? Better Call Saul.
Yeah. Put a little shingle out on Main Street.
There we go.
Legal advice cheap.
I have a son who's becoming a lawyer.
My condolences.
Yeah.
Now it's a good field if you can get in the right kind of it. You know, like I don't know, a lot of the corporate law seems pretty interesting. I don't like criminal too much.
Yep. I think he wants to sue people.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been in my share of those. Luckily, as the protagonist rather than the antagonist. So it's no fun to be sued, but I've only been sued one time and it wasn't my fault. So luckily they dropped the case.
I think I recognize Tom Morris. Tom, how you doing? He's muted.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was muted. I was trying to figure out how to get it off mute. I'm good, John. How are you?
Good. Long time no see.
Yeah, man. Good to see you again.
Be good to catch up and hear how you're doing.
Yeah, well, last time we talked, I've made some progress, made a couple changes. So things are moving along. I appreciate it.
He flushed everything he was working on before, John.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll give it just a few more minutes here. Folks are still coming in. All right.
Hello, Dennis.
Hey, how are you?
Mute is here. Everybody.
Yeah. I have to tell you that we have about, I think about 8 100-year-old pecan trees.
Wow.
Maybe even older than that. We're not sure how old they are. They're on my wife's grandfather's place. So we don't know if he planted them or his father planted them, but they're old and there's a lot of branches to pick up all the time.
I bet.
That's not unusual in Eastern North Carolina. Her grandfather has the same deal.
Yeah.
It was a cow pasture,
Oh, okay.
That's where he put them.
Well, I have this friend who he's an older fellow. He's a professor at James Madison when I went there. And he retired down near the homestead in Virginia. And he married this woman who had a big estate. And until he was in his mid-80s, he spent a good part of his time picking up branches all over this place. And I used to give him unmerciful grief about how he's worked all his life and now he's just a stick picker upper. And here I am doing the same damn thing. That's what's funny. And he knows it too. So he never fails to let me have it. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, we feel your pain.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. I'm a city guy, so this is all new to me.
Yeah. Are they good producers?
Well, about 4 years ago, we got like 400 pounds.
Good.
And we haven't got any since.
Wow.
This was an excellent year for pecans.
Yeah, you should have got some this year.
We think the hurricanes damaged. There was a lot of standing water in that yard, and we think that's the only thing we can think of. Nothing else has really changed.
Pink Hill, right?
Yeah, Pink Hill.
Pink Hill. He said Pink Hill.
Yeah, you're not far from us.
Yeah.
We're down in Seven Springs.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of those older pecans don't produce anymore because they are too susceptible to scab.
I see.
Over the years, they have become more susceptible, and people don't commercially spray them. So that's the problem.
Okay. My wife's family built the Seven Springs Resort.
Oh,
wow.
Maxwell's?
Yeah, I'll tell you the story sometime. That he was a Maxwell. He's actually from Georgia. Maxwell's got a long and sordid past, but he came from Georgia, and he got off at Kinston and wanted to know where Seven Springs was, and they told him. He said, "Well, how much will you charge to give me a ride?" And they told him 25 cents. He didn't want to pay the 25 cents, so he walked from Kinston to Seven Springs carrying 2 suitcases full of cash, which he was using to buy the place.
That's a great story.
Yeah, there's more. The Maxwells were something else.
Well,
All right.
Yeah, the
Well,
water down there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got enough people here. Well, they're still coming in. Hold on a second. So hopefully, no, we're getting there.
Just one can.
Yeah, I don't know. I just got to keep clicking, I guess. Admit all. Okay. So hopefully this will work. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming today. And the star of the show today is John Cianamia, which I never pronounce right. He'll correct me, but John is a wonderful man who teaches things that are so complicated I can't understand them, so he teaches them. And this is really, and I don't mean to intimidate you, it's really not that hard, but it is kind of its approach to business planning. I'm going to call it the modern business plan, and it's known as the business model canvas. We have a lot of material on our member resources, so you can dig in all you want. We have a whole section, I think, of about 7 or 8 classes on video. And the idea behind it is really a visual way of creating a business plan. At the same time, also teach you about customer discovery. How do you find new customers? Is there a kind of an organized process that you can use to actually find new customers? And the answer is yes. So John has been associated with the ECU in a variety of roles over the years. He's been a venture capitalist. He's been I think he's been a CPA. I don't know what the hell you've been, John. You've done everything as far as I'm concerned. But he's a wonderful guy, and he is going to teach us, so you don't have to listen to me today. So you got that going for you. So with that, John, I'm going to make you co-host, hopefully, if I do it right. And then you'll be able to control the screen. So let me try that. Sorry, here. Let's see. John C. Is that you, John? John C?
Yes.
Okay. And I will make you co-host. Okay. So hopefully, John, you see the controls now? For sharing the screen and that kind of stuff?
I see it. Let me see if I can do it.
Yes.
All right.
It's working.
And I have a PowerPoint I will make live here.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. And John, if you want to tell them a little bit about yourself, you can, or if not, you can just jump into it, whatever you want to do.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction, but excuse me, I have spent most of my career in early stage venture capital in New York and in North Carolina. I was a senior person on 4 different funds. I've invested in over 100 early stage companies through all that. Also did some ventures of my own on the side and co-founded several businesses. I'm still involved with a few startups today. I also, when I'm not helping with certain small businesses, I have a business called Blackhawk Technologies. We help companies sell or license assets. And our clients range from the very big, like Volvo Car Corporation, all the way down to small businesses, which basically run out of gas or money and need an exit for everybody. And they're trying to figure out, how do we license or sell the assets in a way that salvages some value? But today we're going to talk about creating your lean canvas. And essentially it is a business planning tool. And I know years ago when I got started, way before the internet and the PCs, when people wrote business plans, they were very long documents. I think in one of the first big startups I did, which was years ago in California, I found the business plan the other day, but with appendices and all, it easily approached 100 pages. And to be honest, nobody reads them. Remember years ago, there was a banker friend in New York City, and he said the first thing he did every morning when he got in the office was figure how much mail, which was unsolicited business plans, he could throw out without reading them. He just threw them in the garbage if it didn't have a name on it that he recognized. So again, most people don't read them. There was a tool called the Business Model Canvas, and many of you have probably seen it, particularly if you're involved with some of the programs around ECU. It does work with many businesses, but it's been modified to this so-called lean canvas. And when you see it, it's actually not a bad tool. It's not intimidating. There's no wrong answers. It's the kind of thing you work with over time, and you can modify as you learn more information and go through the customer discovery process. But ultimately, the purpose, what you want to do is wash out the risk before starting your business. And that's what's important about it, is helping you minimize your risk. It also can serve as a tool for attracting other partners, investors, or others. First, to back up, what was the Business Model Canvas? And this is very simply what it looked like. There are 9 rectangles on this chart, and each one is defined with specific tasks. If you look at the lean canvas, it also has 9 rectangles with different things that you fill in. They're slightly different, and their approach is a little different. But if you compare them, we'll start in the top left. The blue is the lean canvas. The red is the business model canvas. Lean canvas talks about the problem versus the business model canvas saying key partners. Going across on the top, lean canvas solution, the business model canvas key activities. Customer segments on the far right is the same, but the next to the left of customer segments, unfair advantage for lean canvas, customer relationships for the business model canvas. On the bottom, cost and revenues are the same. One thing which I think is a good difference is under solution on the sort of the left side, you see key metrics for lean canvas and key resources for the business model canvas. And the key metrics, when you think about it, is probably a better measure because when you're a startup or an early stage company, it's nice to have those milestones to aim for. And how do you gauge progress? In terms of the filling out, how do you go about it? There is a recommended sequence, but in honesty, when you're doing it, you can do the easy ones first if you want. You don't have to follow it in sequence, but following it in sequence does help, particularly on the first several, because they sort of build on each other. But the number one is the problem, defining the problem. We're going to go through some examples. Number 2, what are the customer segments? And then what is the unique value proposition to address those customer segments? And you can have more than one unique value proposition. Number 4, solution, 5 channels, 6 revenue streams, 7 cost, 8 metrics, and 9 unfair advantage. So you can see the revenue and cost structure, that's defined later. I know a lot of people like to jump into that right away, but doesn't make any sense modeling that until you really thought about the customers and the value proposition. A few takeaways from all this is, one, this you're going to find it does not take a large amount of time. And again, you can do a section, lay it down, go back and edit it. As you interview customers, you're probably going to modify things. So it's very easy to work with. You should think mostly in the present about what you're doing and always keep the customer in mind. So again, edit it, use it as a tool. There's no wrong answers. It's really to help you with your business. Now, I'm going to use 3 examples of companies that I was involved with over the years as we fill out the lean model canvas or the lean canvas. And I think it'd be instructive because there are 3 different types of businesses, and maybe there'll be some similarities you might see with your own business. The scuba diver was actually a business to develop products for underwater GPS. And this goes back about 20 years ago. I have an electrical engineering friend who was an amateur scuba diver, and he went on a vacation and in the Caribbean and wasted 2 tanks of air looking for a shipwreck. And after doing that, he said there's got to be a better way, because according to the terrestrial GPS, he was where the wreck should have been, but he couldn't find it, spending all that time under the ocean. So he wanted to develop an underwater GPS technology business. The middle one, it was representing a patent, is a business that I was a co-founder in 2010 and is a service business. We had a unique set of skills and people, and the market opportunity was right for a intellectual property brokerage business. And this was a company that would help large companies sell or license, so essentially monetize their patents. The hot dog is what I'll call a retail business. And this was a food business where I was invited to participate with another to acquire the hot dog business. And this goes back 30 years ago. And again, before social media, before internet, all that. But to acquire this hot dog business and look at franchising it. So again, 3 different types of business. We have a product, we have a service, and we have a retail product. And certainly stop me if you have questions as we go. So what I'll do is on each slide, you'll see the canvas up in the top right, and the green area is the part we're going to be addressing. So the first section in terms of the sequence is the problem. And what we're attempting to do is list the top 3 problems, and it doesn't have to be 3, it could be 1, but the top 3 problems that you're trying to address. You also should think about what are the existing alternatives, and how these problems are solved today. So using my 3 businesses as example, in the underwater GPS business, the top 3 problems. One is you can't navigate underwater. I haven't kept up with the technology, but back in those days, most people didn't realize it, but even the Navy SEALs, when they were going on a mission, you had one person who had a compass on a board, and another diver would count kicks, and then they would pop their head up, and hopefully they're in the right place, but they did not have underwater GPS. And there's some issues about why you don't have underwater GPS, technical issues. A second big problem is you can't locate objects. There are still underwater communication cables. They do get broken from time to time, either intentionally or unintentionally by anchors or other things. You also have to locate underwater pipes and sites where you're doing drilling. The last big issue for underwater is you can't communicate easily. So it's improved since then, but if you were on a dive with a friend, you basically were using hand signals. There wasn't a way in those days to communicate from diver to diver. If you look at the existing alternatives, and this is going back again to 20 years ago, terrestrial GPS gets you close, but it's not going to tell you underwater where it exactly is. The satellite GPS system does not get you underwater. A compass, again, that's the current method, method 20 years ago, but it is not going to get you where you need to be. And hand signals was the way to really get around the communication. In terms of the intellectual property brokerage business, what problems we were trying to solve. One is many companies, even the big public companies, didn't know how to monetize their intellectual property. When we would talk to the big companies, and they may have 1,000 or 10,000 patents, a lot of them knew that they had things that were not core to their business. It'd be nice if they could sell it, but they didn't know how to go about it. And they didn't know necessarily which ones were in demand or had value in the marketplace. So those were big issues. What they used to do is a lot of times they would hire a lawyer, but lawyers are not in the business generally of monetizing intellectual property.
Hey, John.
Yes.
I wonder if I could just jump in here with a comment. John is talking about problems, and I want to just draw the line to your own businesses and to think about what your business is trying to do for the customers. You're trying to solve problems for your customers. And the way the business model canvas is oriented, it's oriented toward identifying those problems that you're addressing and then going through the process to make sure that your approach is actually addressing that problem. So in the training that we do and the kind of the way we look at the world here at Accelerate Rural, we look at what problem is your business solving, or what problems, plural. And so I did want to draw that line for everybody. Sorry, John.
No, that's a good point. Thank you. Again, all the alternatives for the intellectual property problems was hire a lawyer, and those there weren't lawyers that really specialized in monetizing. They're really practicing law. They can help analyze certain things, but they're not there to sell things or license things per se. Most companies did nothing. There was an issue, they knew it existed. They didn't know how to go about solving the problem. And in terms of finding buyers, it was kind of a hit and miss for many of them. They would do cold calls. They didn't have the network. There was no one location where you could find a set of buyers, because generally these are global companies where you are selling things globally, and the intellectual property demand was global. In the food business, there is a demand for unique foods. And if you think about how things have progressed, there are a lot of specialty food businesses. Some are ethnic or otherwise. There was also a need for speed, and the hot dog business fit that. The to-go drive-through lines were not as prevalent back in the early 80s as they are today. I mean, they certainly existed, but they're not like they are today. The last thing was convenience. The existing alternatives back in that time in that city, White Castle was about 2 blocks away. There was a Jack in the Box. There were some others, but McDonald's didn't have the footprint then in that city as big, and some of the others didn't exist. The next segment in the canvas is in the far right, and that is the customer segments. So you want to list your target customers and users, and it's good to identify early adopters and what their characteristics of the ideal customer is, because particularly if you're selling a product for the first time, it's good to get the key opinion leaders or the bell cows, say, that would help sell and get others attracted to the business. So if we go back to the 3 examples of the companies I have, the key customers in the case of underwater GPS, US Navy was a potentially big customer, particularly the Navy SEALs. Submarines did have very good inertial navigation systems, so not necessarily there. Underwater resource companies, were a specialized and still are a specialized set of companies that have very large ships and other equipment for locating assets underwater. And when I say locating, placing a drilling rig on a specific X on the bottom of the ocean, or finding pipes or cables or repairing them. So there's a whole set of companies that deal with that world. And the last potential customer group was the set of recreational divers. The characteristics for the early adopter is someone or group that has a critical need for navigation, location, and communication. And those are very simple words for this problem in terms of early adopters. The intellectual property brokerage business, the target customers or users were companies with large portfolios. And the reason you want companies with large portfolios, first of all, companies own the majority of the patents in the world. They invent more patents than everybody else. And also, to be honest, they'll probably pay more for and allow for more in terms of sales. You want companies also that have non-core intellectual property. So companies that have a likelihood that a part of their portfolio is not needed for the business, but they would gladly part with if you could find them a buyer. And lastly, those that are unable to find buyers, because there are a lot of companies that just didn't know how to go about it. They're probably not ever going to be approached by somebody to say, would you be willing to sell it? So the characteristics of the ideal customer for this service business was some company with a large portfolio in key areas. And I say key areas, not all areas are of the same value. Some are harder to sell. Biotech, for example, would be harder to sell than electronics during the time period we were doing this, or semiconductors. A desire to monetize and realistic price expectations. And I say realistic price expectations because if the company said they need $1 billion out of the portfolio, we wouldn't take it on. There's no way you're going to ever get them that kind of money. So you needed somebody that was realistic about their approach. For the hot dog business, excuse me, the target customers are epicures or people who really appreciate a good hot dog. In those days, I think there probably might have been more hot dog places around. I don't see as many these days. There's still hot dog stands in certain cities, but these were specialized hot dogs that were made by an old German family. They were small, probably about 4 inches in size, and they had a special chili sauce. And I used to like to say, if you're a Harold and Kumar fan, it is the White Castle of hot dogs, even though it was a one of a kind. College students, there were 2 colleges nearby. It was a big draw for them. So it was evident that group would be a potential marketer, that age group. Also, local shoppers and business people. It wasn't a city of about 50,000. There was a lot of foot traffic in the downtown area, and it was a common place for people to go for lunch. The early adopter, the characteristics, a regular consumer of fast food or diner food, somebody who likes flavorful meals such as hot dogs. And I say flavorful because you can see it has chili, mustard, and onions on it. No questions? On the unique value proposition, what we want to do here is identify a single message that states why you are different and worth paying attention to. And again, I said earlier that you can have more than one value proposition. And I know it's an unusual term, value proposition, but it's easy when you get into it. And maybe looking at the examples is the easiest way. If you look at the underwater GPS, the value proposition is underwater GPS and communication not dependent on line of sight and includes the mesh network. Now, that's a lot of technical terms, but for divers or people involved with underwater tasks, that is a big thing. The issue with line of sight is if you had an obstruction, say a shipwreck, and one diver is on one side and the other diver is on the other side, in most systems, because they did not have direct line of sight, they would not be able to communicate. But with this system, the communication would work. You would not have to be able to see the person unobstructed. The high-level concept, it'd be underwater GPS for military, commercial, and professional users. The value proposition for the service business is have buyers interested in intellectual property. And when I say have buyers, we knew we could assemble a list of ready buyers. When I say a list of ready buyers, we had connections with major companies who would tell us they are interested in patents or acquiring technology in the following areas. And they would give us very specific wish lists, which was easy to match up with or go find patents in those areas. Continue with the value proposition, have experience selling and licensing and relatively quick turnaround, and it is success fee based. So it is no big cash outlay for the seller. The high-level concept is intellectual property brokers helping companies monetize their intellectual property. The intellectual property brokering business, it really was fragmented, and it was not a big business in those days. On the hot dog business, the value proposition would be convenient, delicious hot dogs and other diner food. This was a diner in an old 3-story brick building, city building, was on the first floor. But if you thought of an old style diner with a counter where you had a bunch of stools people sat at, a modest number of tables, and for their takeout on the sidewalk, there was a sidewalk in front of the store. There was a window that opened where people could just walk up to the window. The window would open and they would sell the hot dogs or whatever the food was to go. The high level concept, world famous, most delicious hot dogs. And world famous was a term that they were starting to use because of the college crowd. A lot of the kids were from other countries. And when they left the college town, they would write back how much they missed the hot dogs from whatever country they resided. And they used to post those letters on the wall. So they would say it's world famous, but it was a way of distinguishing the company. The solution, we're going to outline a solution for each of the problems identified. In the case of the diver, you can't navigate is the problem. The solution is an underwater GPS network. And when I say a network, the company had an idea for creating what was called a meshed network. And this was a way of where a network didn't exist. If you think of in your own home, you have a link for Wi-Fi. You could think of creating a network of independent nodes under the water so that if one of the nodes was disabled, an enemy found it, or it became unoperational, the rest of the network would work because each node talks to the other and the diver can connect to any node within that general area. In terms of can't locating objects, they had some ideas about how would you tag underwater assets. When I say tag it, you literally attach something to it. It would have a way of putting a signal and with a location so that you could find it easily. And lastly, on the communication, there was an idea and a design to communicate via the dive watch. Every diver had a watch which provided certain information about depth and other things, but that did have enough capability where you can put in the communication, and the idea would have pre-canned text messages that you could communicate to the other diver. In the intellectual property business, the problems being addressed first, don't know how to monetize. We had a team that had experience in processes for monetizing. It included people who came out of big companies like IBM, Lenovo, and Boeing, who knew how to do this on a massive scale and also had a lot of connections. The second problem, companies have IP that's not core to the business. This value proposition does provide a return to the company on the non-core assets. So essentially, if you think about it, they have patents. They don't need to protect anything they're doing. They're basically just sitting there on the shelf. They're paying maintenance fees every 5 or 7 years, whatever was required, and they're not making any money off it. So this would be a way of making money off the assets. The last problem, they don't know how to find buyers. We had the people with Rolodexes and buyer connections in place. So it solved a very quick problem, sort of a one-stop shop. The hot dog business, the problem, demand for unique foods. The concept or that we were evaluating was, could it be franchised? It was a single location, but would that hot dog type approach work if we took it on a bigger scale? The second problem, need for speed, because everybody wanted food quickly. You would maintain the fast food type layout of some kind of takeout, drive-through, whatever. And the third problem, convenience, they had to have accessible locations. Again, it was on a major street in a small city. Parking wasn't great, but you think about locations with fast food places, they generate high volume, traffic volume areas where they can get the flow and customers. So we went through these kind of quickly, but the white areas were the ones we talked about today, and the green areas we're going to talk about on Tuesday. But you can see it's fairly quick to go through them, and it's kind of thing you jot down ideas, you can put it down, do it later, but you could also use it in when you go out and talk to customers and do customer discovery, and we'll get into more of the customer discovery on Tuesday. But at this time, I would like to pause for questions.
Has anybody here been exposed to the business model canvas before? It's a new thing. Martin's shaking his head. Tell us about it, Martin.
Actually, John and David Mayo are the ones who helped me do my business model. And it just actually helped me to get in order. Just like he said, it got my house in order because I was all over the place. So with that said, it gave me basically a list of ways, a map to get to my customers, what I needed to do, what I was up against, what was I trying to solve. And it's real cut and dry. Like I said, I was in sales for 20 years. So I always wanted to add that fluff, just basically a checklist of what you need to do and just dissecting your own company. And you'll find by doing that, it actually helps you to approach not only the customer, but the way you're going to proceed. So roadmap, basically.
Do you continue to use that over time or just in the beginning?
I actually use it over time and then change as I go along, as I grow, or as different things happen. I could add and minus. It's pretty flexible as you move along. At least for me, it is when you move along.
One thing that you'll find, some of you, if you apply for a loan or talk to an investor, you can just kind of drop on them that you know all about the BMC and that you've done that and use it as a roadmap, and they'll probably approve your loan just because you said that. That would be my guess. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or experiences that they want to share?
Hey, Dennis, I've done the business model canvas as well through, I started with iCourt ECU.
Okay.
And one of the things that it's really helped me with is, you can imagine on a plunger, I've got a couple of different market segments. I've got residential, commercial, and kind of before you lay all that out, there's a lot, your mind is just confused. There's all these different directions you can go. And this really helped me where I did one based, strictly on residential. Then I did one for commercial. And then I've continued to sort of expand those because the value proposition for, let's say, a restaurant may be different than a value proposition for a hotel. And so, when you're going out to, when you're talking to a hotel, it's just a different animal than the restaurants. And so this really helps you to kind of break those up and really stay focused on what that value proposition is, depending on which customer segment you're going to talk to.
Yeah, if you think about it, if any of you ever watched like an NFL football game, you'll see the coaches with clipboards or the laptops, and they'll have all kinds of charts and color coding, and that's not. I'm not saying they're using business model canvas, but they are using a game plan to address their different things that they have available to them. I do, and I bring up football because I do want to introduce the group to Jamal Brown, who's new today, and Jamal has a football background, and he's launching a startup right now, and you'll be hearing more from him. But I did want to welcome him and make sure you guys knew that Jamal had joined us.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Hey, Jamal.
How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
All right, John, I'll shut up now.
Well, one other thing I didn't bring up, but if anybody was in the military or ever dealt with a military quad chart, you could think of the business model canvas in some ways like that. And the military oftentimes uses this one page where the page is carved up into 4 quadrants, and they have to summarize everything about the mission or the project in that one page, 4 areas. So it is a good tool, and I think if you use it, it works. So you'll find that in doing businesses, it used to be, again, you had to have those lengthy business plans. Now pitch decks are accepted, and now even brief summaries are accepted. People don't really want to see all the words that you have to write out because they know it changes, plus they're not going to read it. Any other questions?
Hey, I have a question. Hey, I can share my video real quick. So my husband and I are farmers. So I'm trying to figure out, I guess, how we would apply this to our different revenue streams. So for instance, if I'm assuming from what I'm reading, we would take this model and then we would say, okay, so this will be for e-commerce. This will be for farmers markets. This will also be for our buying clubs as well as like wholesale. Am I understanding this correctly? Like we would take this exact model and then apply it to each one of those revenue streams.
Well, I think you're jumping ahead to the revenue streams. Yeah, okay. I would start with what is the problem you're trying to solve. So I don't know much about the farming, but if you had specific crops that are addressing a need or problem, maybe start with that, customer segments next. So think of it in those terms. What are the key customer segments for those problems? And then work from there.
Oh, yes. So that's what I was getting at. Like we would apply this for each one of the, like, I guess our customers are the same, but they're different. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. So we have some customers who are just interested in wholesale, right? But then we also have customers who just want to purchase from us from the market. And then we may then have customers who just want to purchase from us through our e-commerce platform. So that's what I was getting at. Will we do this for each different buyer persona?
I would, if they are meaningful segments. You know, obviously you want to capture maybe the top 80%, but yes, I would do that and just see how it works out. And if it makes sense, continue down that path. If it doesn't, go back and redo it.
Yeah, let me just add to that, Paige. I think that the problem that you're trying to solve is providing healthy food to people, and the people whose problem you're trying to solve will access the solution to your problem in a number of different channels. And this model, as you get further into it, helps with that. It may turn out that a channel that you didn't think much about actually turns out to be the largest channel that you have. They maybe not really thought about it before. So the problem, focusing on the problem, and that in your case, delivering healthy food to people is number one, and making sure you're clear on that. And then how do you solve the problem? And John will get into channels and revenue streams to kind of support solving the problem, or problems plural.
Any other comments or questions? Dennis, we're going to have an early dismissal today.
We can. It's totally up to you. Whatever works. Are you finished at this point? The rest will be on Monday?
The rest will be on Monday. I want to give enough for people to think on it, get started. If you work on it between now and Monday, come back with other questions. We can do that and start at the next class, and then we'll finish up on it. Great.
So everybody in the member resources on acceleraterural.org, you'll see under Techstars and Entrepreneurs Toolkit, this is the very first section, and there's a number of explainer videos and little segments that can help you get a better handle on this, and in preparation for Monday when John will do the second half of this. But just to give, this is really intended to give you some structure and a process to follow. Make sure you've identified the problem that you're trying to solve with your business. And then you start talking about how do you address that? How do you solve the problem? What channels do you pursue? You have wholesale, retail. Some of you have mentioned things like restaurants or other channels of bringing your product to market. And the goal here is really to give you a foundation in thinking in terms of problems that you're solving and then ways that you can bring your solution to the people who have the problem. So any questions, thoughts, ideas? That's really all I have for today. If anybody has anything they want to ask or contribute, please feel free. If you have not sent me your logo and URL that you want us to put on the page, please do so. And I'm also trying to get my act together to put out a calendar where you can book time, one-on-one time, where we can talk about your particular situation and your questions you might have that are very specific to you, so that we can customize some of the approaches that we're taking and looking at. So that will appear. I'll send out an email and it'll give you some choices of times that we can book for this one-on-one, which will be on Zoom also, unfortunately. But be looking for that. I hope to have that set up, by the weekend. And if there's anything else or questions, concerns, ideas that you have, please don't hesitate to reach out and connect with me or anyone else on the team.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So John, looking at this in terms of customer segments and maybe a little bit of homework that we can do on this. So in our case, we'll bring, hopefully we have again multiple channels. For customer segments, should we be thinking about, in my case, it'd be a wholesale, a retail, as far as like a storefront and e-commerce. Would those be the three kind of customer segments, and then develop an ideal customer for each of those in this process of it? Or do we need to get more granular than wholesale, retail, e-commerce?
Well, behind or within each of those, I mean, is there a certain demographic or type of consumer? I don't know your business, first of all, so I'm just guessing. But if there's some specific set group within that makes more sense for the target, you might think about that.
Okay, well, that was kind of my question. Is should we narrow a little bit further into those areas, ideal customer based on each potential segment?
I think if you start with that, but then if you get into some of these other things, you'll see if it makes sense, and then you could back up and change it. So, for example, when you get into unfair advantage, and you're talking about the e-tail sector, does it make sense without further refinement? So I start there and see how it ends up.
Okay.
Start where you are talking about.
Yeah, I think when you're thinking of customer segments, don't think about how you reach the customer. Just think about who the customer is, their age, their character, their demographic characteristics, their geography, the type of person or industry that they're in. That's identifying the problem that you're trying to solve. Then as you identify that group, then you start thinking about, well, how am I going to reach that group? Am I going to reach them wholesale, retail, through e-commerce, through storefronts, through door-to-door? Those are all channels and approaches that hopefully will result in revenue streams. But if you think in terms of the customer, maybe I used to always start with what I called the perfect customer. Who would be my ideal customer at the stage I'm at? And you may find out that in fact is not your ideal customer, but you have to start somewhere. So it might be, I'm just making this up, 18 to 35, married, living in the state of North Carolina, income over 25,000 to 100,000. You see what I'm talking about. But that's the first step is figuring out what problem that you're solving. And that will also give you some insights into the type of scale that you can reach. If your problem, the problem that you're solving is so small that it's not really worth pursuing, you need to figure that out early on rather than later. So identifying the customer segment that you're going to address, and then getting into how do we reach that customer will help you plan your resources accordingly. How big do you have to be, or do you want to be? How big is the opportunity? And in my experience working with this platform, over time, once you dig in, you'll start to get really excited because you'll start to develop an intrinsic understanding of the problem that you're solving for people. And that enables you to communicate clearly what you're doing, to reach people who can help you reach those customers, like professional advisors, for example. If you're in the financial business, sometimes it's good to have accountants and lawyers who can help you reach your customers and so forth. So I think identifying the problem that you're solving and then identifying who has that problem are really the first steps in this process.
Thank you. I appreciate some of that further information and clarification.
Yeah, first time I looked at this, I had no idea what John was talking about, but I'm now on version number 30 or more, so I'm starting to get a glimpse of what he's talking about. Okay, well, John, thank you very much for coming today, and we'll see everyone again on Monday. Get your logos to me and keep your eyes open for my scheduling email. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.